Hello and welcome. We'll get started in just a moment. We've just started our Zoom webinar, so we'll give a moment for folks to get online there, and then we'll get started. Thank you all for joining us tonight. These are the best meetings because there's so much buzz and energy in the room, so thank you all for being here. I now call this meeting of the South Whidbey School Board to order. As I was saying earlier, thank you all for being here. This is an exciting meeting because we have student presentations. These are always the best meetings when we get to see the work being done by the students and staff and get to show it off to the community a little bit. We will start with our land acknowledgement, for which we will turn to Director Greenherron.
Thank you. South Whidbey School District would like to begin by acknowledging that we gather on the ancestral homelands, originally known as Jacolche and Luseed, of the coastal Salish peoples, on the lands of the Lower Skagit, Tulalip, Swinomish, Snohomish, Stillaguamish, and Suquamish, who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin since time immemorial and have hunted, fished, gathered, and taken care of these lands. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and we honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. Please join me in expressing our deepest respect and gratitude to the Indigenous people of this territory and for their enduring care and protection of the land in which we currently occupy and share through the Treaty of Point Elliott, signed by 82 tribes in Mukilteo on January 22nd, 1855. And since it's also Women's History Month, I wanted to call out a inspiring woman, Indigenous person named Susan LaFlèche Picot. She was a doctor from the Omaha tribe in the 19th and 20th centuries, the first Indigenous woman to earn a medical degree in the United States. After doing so, she returned back to the reservation where she grew up, where she was the only doctor for the 1,200 residents of the reservation, spanning 400 square miles. In addition to just treating the patients, she advocated for land rights for First Nations and even opened a hospital on the reservation.
Thank you for sharing that intersectional story. It's always great when we can tie those various things together. This is a business meeting, so this is the opportunity for the board to do its business in public. Some of that business tonight involves getting presentations from the students and comment from the community if they would like to make it. If you are in person and would like to make comment, please talk to Mrs. Macaro there at the back. She'll get you signed up and you'll have 5 minutes to make any comment. The board will not respond to these comments generally, just to let folks know. It's our opportunity to hear what you're thinking, not to engage in a back and forth. We have those opportunities at board workshops where we can talk about the items on the agenda in a back and forth manner. So that's our chance to actually talk back and forth. This is where we're executing the business of the district. If you are on the Zoom call and would like to make a public comment, please use the Q&A function to note your name and your general location, just Freeland, Langley, Clinton, whatever it might be, and then start typing up your, enter that in and then start typing up your comment. When we get to public comment, I will read that. We will move on to the agenda and minutes. Are there any objections to approving the agenda and minutes as presented? Hearing none, the agenda and minutes are approved as presented. Now we'll move on to our presentations. Don't worry, we speed things up so we can get to y'all quickly. I'm going to actually turn it over to Dr. Moshe to pass it along from there.
I'm going to ask Mrs. Richards to introduce her student presentation, and here we go. Enjoy.
Thank you, Dr. Moshe. We're so excited to have students from our third grade program here this evening. And I'm especially grateful to two of our third grade teachers, Marcy Courier and Lori O'Brien, for all the incredible work that they do to bring our students into knowledge about this incredible place we live. And you're going to learn about it tonight. Thank you.
Where should we stand? Oh my God. Hi, I'm Rory.
I am Ava.
And I'm Lily. We are in Miss Courier's third grade class.
Tonight we are going to share what we have learned using the new Amplify reading curriculum.
A few of the units we have been learning are animal classification, body systems, and light and sound. To help you remember how animals are classified, you can use this sentence. All my best friends represent vertebrates, all amphibians, my mammals, best birds, friends, fish represent reptiles.
After we learned about how animals are classified, we picked on a group to write about. I choose birds. I would like to share it with you. I was surprised that birds have cavities in their bones. I was shocked that birds have high metabolism. Metabolism means the process that produces energy for birds when they fly. I thought it was interesting that birds can survive in many different habitats. I was amazed that birds have different shapes of beaks. That is how you tell what type of seeds that bird eats. When I read it, it made me think that birds are super cool. Some can fly, some can't. Some birds can even slide. I was amazed that birds have different shapes of feet. That's how you tell what they land on and how they catch their food. I was amazed that many birds migrate when seasons change. I was surprised that many birds are omnivores, which means they eat plants and animals.
After we wrote about an animal group, we researched about an animal. I would like to share my report on the axolotl. Habitat. Did you know that the axolotl is a freshwater salamander? Axolotls are native to the Valley of Mexico. They are found in the lakes of Mexico, like in the lake Zichimilco. It spends its whole life underwater. Appearance. The axolotl is often olive tan, but sometimes there are mutations that provide other colors like pink, white, blue, black, and gray. The axolotl can be up to 18 inches in length and weigh 8 ounces. The axolotl has not a sphere head, but sideways head, but a head that is sideways and ovalish. That is sometimes flat. They have no eyelids and a mouth that appears like a smile. They have little antennae that are actually gills. Thanks for listening. I'm going to share my report that I wrote about after learning about how the body systems are interconnected. There are 7 body systems. I'm going to tell you 3. The skeletal system, the muscular system, and the nervous system. First, I'm going to tell you about the skeletal system. Did you know that the spine helps you bend and stand straight and it gives your body shape? Did you know that you have 206 bones in your body? Now I'm going to tell you about the muscular system. Did you know that you have about 650 muscles? Every time you move your eyes, you're using 6 muscles, and when you breathe, you're using 12 muscles. Okay, now let's talk about the nervous system. Did you know that you have 7 trillion nerves in your body? In your body? Oh my God. Now remember when you touched the stove when it was on? Well, your hand shot back, didn't it? Well, if it did, then that is called a reflex. A reflex is when your body automatically reacts. The end. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Thanks for having us tonight. Whatever.
you. And I'm going to have Parker and Sylvia and Jordan follow me over here because they made some slides. As third graders, this is their first time making slides. So new thing for them. And they have information to share with you about our gray whale, orca, and salmon program. I'm going to let Parker introduce the group, and I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Good evening. I'm Parker. I'd like to introduce Sylvie and Jordan. We are going to share some highlights about gray whales, orcas, and salmon. They all live in the Salish Sea that surrounds our beautiful island.
Have you ever seen a gray whale? They come by Whidbey in the spring to eat ghost shrimp along our shores. Gray whales are sometimes called knucklebacks because they have bumps on their backs instead of large dorsal fins. They also have 2 blowholes instead of 1. It looks like a heart when they breathe out air. Sometimes they swallow garbage along with ghost shrimp. This is a big problem.
Have you ever gotten to see an orca? The orcas that live around here are called southern resident orcas. They mostly eat salmon. They live in family pods and help each other out. These orcas are endangered. There are only about 75 orcas left in the Salish Sea. Noise and not having enough food are big problems for orcas. If you make a big noise, then the orcas can hurt their ears and cause them stress. Yes, they have ears under their blubber. They need their ear bones to use echolocation, but if they can't use their ear bones, then they can't find salmon.
We are raising salmon at our school to increase salmon populations around Whidbey. The salmon migration is a hard migration. They have to go through a lot to lay their babies. Only about 2 out of 3,000 eggs make it.
Ways you can help gray whales, orcas, and salmon.
Number 1, you can help by cleaning up trash. If a floods happen, then trash can go into the sea.
Number 2, please do not make big noises when an orca is near you. Boats should slow down and give them space.
Keep the water clean. The island and sea are connected.
Number 4, only fish what you need. Leave the rest for creatures who live in the Salish Sea.
Number 5, remember to be kind and leave no trace.
If you are doing this, then you are doing the right thing. We have some riddles for you. I live in the Salish Sea and I live alone. I have knuckle bumps on my back. What am I? Let's do Ingrid. Humpback? Rory. Yes.
I live in pods and prefer to eat salmon. What am I? How about yes, you got that correct.
Orcas and people might call me delicious. What am I?
Lily.
And we got some extra stuff for you, and let's pass it over to
Gray whales are beautiful, Isabella. I like how gray whales are playful.
orcas are actually in the dolphin family, Ruby.
They all have different patterns, Etta. Okay.
Okay. Good job.
Thank you all very much for the presentations. It's wonderful. Sorry, I like to have a couple of comments when we see these because it's so great having students share their knowledge with us that I love that you're learning science in that English language arts curriculum. I think that's fantastic that they're combining those so well. All of you had such great use of powerful, precise words, including some that I would have had trouble pronouncing, and you did great. And I love the interactivity of that last project where you're asking questions of the group. Anything any of the board members want to comment?
I just want to echo what Director Williford said. Good job, friends. And thank you for being here tonight because we know you may have other important things to do like, oh, I don't know, eat dinner, hang out with your family. So thank you so much for taking this extra time with us.
Thank you again. Dr. Moshe.
Oh, I'm the last elementary.
Oh,
pro-
please.
Sorry,
do I do
please.
that?
I am very pleased to introduce Sarah Gillette, one of our fabulous kindergarten teachers. Unfortunately, it was a little past bedtime for most of our kindergarten students, so Sarah's gonna show us some
Well,
of them.
I did. There were a few kindergarten students that I thought, okay, I think they could do it. And then when I talked with the parents and with the kids, and they were like, so we did make a presentation. I did make a presentation, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about what the Farm, Forest, and Sea curriculum looks like at the kindergarten and first grade level. And I don't want to block your view, but try your best there. And it ties in so beautifully because what we're talking about at the kindergarten, first grade level is connecting to this place that is our home, that's been home for people since time immemorial. It's where we live and how do we connect with the farms, the forests, and the sea that's around here. So looking at that at a kindergarten and a first grade lens, we're connecting through stories, and they're, science books, storybooks, all different things through songs, music, and activities and lessons. And of course, using the forests around our school and parks nearby. Next slide. And here, this will be a short video, our Friday kindergarten music. We have lots of different songs that we sing, but always we're singing songs that are incorporating the seasons, that are talking about place and plants. Here, this will be a short, we don't have to play the whole thing, but maybe a short moment. And it's the I Love the Mountains song, but we've put some words of our local stuff, our local environment. But it's not playing. That's okay. It's the I Love the Mountains song, and we're saying, I love the mountains, I love the rolling hills, except we're also talking about salmon streams, the Salish Sea, the cedar trees, the fir trees, the starlight. So we've put our own songs, and the kids are holding up the pictures and words. Again, it's a reading activity as well as singing. So that's something that happens every Friday. And you can go on to the next slide. Another thing that's part of the Farm, Forest, and Sea is, of course, our school garden classes. Every class is going every week at least once. We have some kids that are a little bit older, but I put them in there. I couldn't help it. With the pumpkins, those are I think it's the fourth graders getting ready to make the pumpkin pies. But here's some kindergartners. They've just ripped out the mouse melons in the fall, and they're getting ready to compost them and turn them into soil that will turn into new plants in the spring. Next slide. And here's, again, these are kindergarten first graders, some first and second graders from last year, because I was looking for some carrots being munched on. Every time they're going down to the garden, they are eating vegetables or snacks from the garden. And then the far one is them mulching. They're laying down cardboard. They're working together. Again, it's doing activities that are helping take care of the earth, learning to nurture and steward the earth. These guys are having a great time just throwing straw and hay down that is a mulch. It's a layer of mulch for the garden, putting the garden to bed. And another part is topics and themes like apples, squash, how seeds grow, how plants grow. And that's, again, that's one of our science standards is understand at the kindergarten and first grade level, understanding how a seed grows into something and the life cycle of a plant to producing. This is one in the fall, and here's a kindergarten with a big buddy. And they're pressing the apples. They're going into the apple mulch. And then here, that same day, this kindergartner is reading a story using the little class microphone that's about harvesting and pressing apples. So that's one of our, and then this is a first grade. It's one of the units that's part of the knowledge curriculum that's about different ecosystems, but that also includes freshwater and saltwater systems, of which we have both here on the island. So embedded in that, drawing and writing and learning about these ecosystems, but also bringing it to place that we're also visiting the outdoor classroom. We're visiting school, parks nearby. And then this one here on the right this is a thinking question in my classroom. Do trees help you? And just thinking about, always one of the goals is we are in relationship. These are our neighbors, our communities, not only our human neighbors, but also the trees and the plants and the systems at work. So that was their thinking. They had some different ideas about air and paper and buildings and protection and syrup and food, and that it's good for your heart also being in trees. So next slide. I think we skipped one year. And then that's just the forest trails, weekly or monthly walks. There's walks happening both with the garden class and also teachers take their classes on walks. And sometimes we're doing like writing or art in the forest. And sometimes it's just for, noticing and being and noticing the changes. And then this is the South Whidbey State Park. We work with Ranger Jen and have partnerships with her, and she comes also to the school and works with classes on the trails. Next one. Again, these are some first graders, just some examples here. They were looking at forest floor connections and what's going on, dynamics on the forest floor. And then this is collected some materials out, and then they came in and made nests. And then just a few more pictures of kindergartners. This is, the work at a kindergarten level is really just connecting, hands-on, talking. It's a lot of teachable moments, what they're interacting with and responding and helping them look closely and hear vocabulary and get concepts. So next one. And again, the sea. So we have the farm, the forest, and the sea. This is the tank that we were just hearing about. So it's in the hallway during the early winter. And so our big buddies invited us and we go and check on the salmon eggs. And so this was the day when the salmon eggs were actually starting to hatch. This week was the week. And so they're literally laying under the tank and looking up through the rocks and seeing little salmon eggs wiggling around and bursting out of their eggs. So that was a pretty fun day. That was a big buddy activity. And then this is in Langley, the whale statue, and we've taken kindergarten and first graders have been to the Langley Whale Museum and exploring the beaches there. So learning about those different habitats, the water cycles, who are our neighbors in the nearby forest and sea. And then I think it's the last one. Second to last. And then this is just in a kelp forest. This is a kindergarten and first grade kelp forest looking at the food web. And then these guys right here are acting out the water cycle, the evaporation, the cloud formation, condensation, and the precipitation. So that's them modeling that for you. They would have done it, but they wouldn't have if they had come. Oh, and then this is just last one, just connecting to our homeland and sea helps children feel connected and familiar with the community and resources where we live. And then as they grow older, really enriching that science, a science lens and a community lens. This is them giving Grandmother Cedar a hug. And Grandmother Cedar's that tree right out there. Before we go in the forest, we always say hello to Grandmother Cedar. So that's that presentation for the kindergartners and first grade.
Sorry for jumping the gun on you there. Thank you very much for sharing that as well.
Well, and Sarah, thank you so much for honoring your kids where they were and their grown-ups as well, and for, speaking on behalf of them tonight.
Sure, I have to commend you for this curriculum is such a beautiful and effective way of not only integrating all the subject matter, but also integrating the classroom and the world around us. It's really amazing to see.
And yes, we will not be offended if you choose to go home after your part. Thank you. Yeah.
Hello, Kayla Phillips, middle school principal. It's my honor to introduce, I have 11 student leaders, but I want to give a little background about what you're going to see tonight. Dr. Mocher reminded us that the middle school was going to present about a month ago. And as a staff, we were thinking, what did we want to highlight from what our school year has been as we became a 6 through 8 school? And we thought of a bunch of different programs or opportunities, but what we chose to select tonight was a presentation these students gave to our entire population a few weeks ago. If you've ever tried to keep the attention of 6th through 8th graders for 30 minutes, you might know the challenges, but they did a phenomenal job. They chose the topic of anti-bullying. Middle school has a lot of challenges, and they want to equip their classmates and their friends with some strategies and knowledge about prevention, intervention, and support. So they spent a lot of time working and creating this presentation for their peers, because we as adults know that we can share our curriculum and we can have lessons, but the impact comes directly from their peers. So they did 3 parts to it. They played Jeopardy with their classmates. For the sake of tonight, they'll just show you an example of that, and then they'll culminate with a skit. So I want to thank also the caregivers, parents that drove their kiddos tonight. I know a lot of you run from softball, from soccer, from horses to a place like this, so thank you. And then I'd love to introduce our 11 representatives for tonight. We have Lena, Sophie, Greta, Reed, Ada, Talia, Georgia, Oakley, Sophia, Weston, and Lucy. And they're going to present tonight on kind of a modified script to the presentation they gave to peers a couple weeks ago. So without further ado, this is your stage.
Okay, hello everyone. This is a poster that has a bullying pledge on it and anti-bullying pledge. And the pledge says, I pledge to support others who have been hurt or harmed, treat others with kindness, be more accepting of people's differences, and help include those who are left out. This was signed by many students and staff. We are planning on hanging this poster up in our school. And I think this is really cool because so many people signed it. These are all of our signatures, like kind of on the bottom. And this just shows how many people are willing to help continue to make our school a better place. So, yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Georgia. And so at the assembly, I asked everyone, what do they think bullying was to them? And now I'm going to ask you, what do you think bullying is? And think that to yourselves. Okay. All right. Well, bullying is when someone repeatedly hurts, threatens, or picks on another person on purpose. And there are 4 types of bullying: cyberbullying, physical bullying, verbal bullying, and emotional bullying.
Oh, this is me. I'm Ada, and I'm going to talk to you. What do what to do and not do if you see someone being bullied. What you shouldn't do is watch and do nothing, record and laugh, encourage the behavior, join in, and not tell a teacher and or a trusted adult. You also don't want to exaggerate the story. What you can do is talk to a trusted adult, interfere, stand up to the bully, don't repeat rumors, not encourage or tolerate the behavior, and talk to the victim and ask what you can do to help.
Okay. In my experiences, there has been confusion about conflict versus bullying in our school. So I'm just here to help clarify and for my peers. So conflict is disagreements or arguments that can happen between friends or family, and they usually don't happen more than once. And bullying is usually like repeated and comes from anger or aggression. So, yes.
I'm Greta, and I'm going to talk about cyberbullying because it is one of the most common types of bullying. Cyberbullying is to use tech to hurt others. Ways of cyberbullying is to send mean messages, rumors, or embarrassing content. To prevent, be kind and think before posting because it can really affect others if you don't think about what you post, even if it's just a joke. Stand up for bullying, report to an adult or platform. Some middle school tips to help prevent this is be careful sharing online, treat others kindly online and offline, speak up against cyberbullying, and take a social media break for balance. Even though it's hard, it can be healthy.
Hi, I'm Lucy, and I'm here to talk to you about verbal bullying. Verbal bullying is the use of words to hurt or humiliate. Forms of verbal bullying are name calling, spreading rumors, insults, threats, and other verbal abuse. To prevent verbal bullying, create a respectful, kind community, and people who are victims of verbal bullying are most likely to become bullies. Middle school tips for verbal bullying are: encourage empathy and have open communication. Use words to uplift and support others. Stand up, speak out, support, and report. Hi, everyone. So physical bullying can be seen as a force to harm or intimidate someone. Some forms of physical bullying is hitting, pushing, or tripping. To prevent this form of bullying, you can help create a safe or respectful space. Now, to help create this space, you can start by being kind and inclusive to your peers. And if you ever see this kind of bullying, please tell a trusted adult. Some middle school tips are to always be kind and stand up for your peers. And remember, if you see something, say something.
Hi guys, I'm Talia. I'm going to talk about emotional bullying. Emotional bullying is a form of bullying that uses words or actions to hurt someone. Forms of emotional bullying are teasing, spreading rumors, and even exclusiveness. To prevent emotional bullying, promote empathy and respect and be inclusive to everyone. Choose kindness over aggressiveness and stand against bullying. Support the victim and report it if you are witnessing bullying. Middle school tips are to be mindful and choose kindness. Stand up, offer support to the victim, and report. Foster empathy and treat people with respect. Create an inclusive environment and stand against exclusion.
Okay, RAC. RAC stands for Random Acts of Kindness. In the past, we've done RAC Week or RAC Month, but this year we wanted everybody to give it a try till the end of the year and beyond. So examples of RAC or Random Acts of Kindness are holding the door for someone as people are walking out of the classroom, or like giving a compliment to someone, or like reaching out to someone you don't talk to all the time. And that creates a better environment for our school. Okay, so in the assembly, we did an anti-bullying Jeopardy. So we had 3 teams of 3, and each team had 1 6th grader, 1 7th grader, and 1 8th grader. I'd say it was pretty successful. And so as you can see over there, are like the columns and like topics are all about the informational slides that we just showed you. So we can give you guys an example question. Okay, so Anna has a problem with the way Tom chooses food in school. She decides to deal with this by sending him unkind text messages. Who is in the wrong? And then one team would like raise their hand first and answer. And yeah, it went pretty well. So, yes. Okay. And then at the end, we are going to do, or right now, we're going to do a skit, and it's going to be about cyberbullying because we thought that was one of the most important ones to give an example of. So, thank you.
What are you looking at?
Oh, we just posted a really embarrassing photo of Greta
Why would you do that?
Because it's funny.
Oh my gosh, guys, what happened? Oh, we just posted a really embarrassing photo of Greta. Let me see. Oh, that's crazy. I'm gonna go talk to her.
No, don't talk to her and tell her that we posted it.
Okay, I won't. Greta, what happened?
Lena and Sophie posted an embarrassing photo of me on Instagram, and it's going around the whole school, and everyone's making fun of me for it.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That is not okay. I'm gonna go talk to them.
Oh my gosh, what is this?
Greta, oh my gosh, is this you?
Greta, what happened?
Lena and Sophie posted an embarrassing photo of me on Instagram, and it's going around the whole school, and everyone's making fun of me.
That's not okay. Would you like me to talk to them about it?
Sure.
What did you guys do to Greta?
We posted a funny picture of her.
Well, that's not okay. It really hurt her feelings.
I mean, it's just a joke. It doesn't really matter.
You can get in big trouble for cyberbullying. How would you feel if it happened to you?
I guess I'd be pretty upset.
Yeah, we should have thought about the effects of it first.
Yeah, you should delete the post and go say sorry to Greta.
Okay.
Greta, we're really sorry for that photo that we posted of you. We didn't mean to be mean or anything.
It's okay. You just have to think about what you post on social media because it can really affect others no matter if it's just a joke.
Yeah, we thought it was funny at first, but we didn't know how it would affect you. We're sorry.
It's okay. So we did this because to wrap up our assembly because cyberbullying is one of the biggest or common types of bullying that can really affect others, no matter if it's a joke or not. So we wanted to have an example of what you shouldn't do.
Any questions for our lovely students? I warned them you might ask.
Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate you sharing the experience that you brought to your fellow students because it makes us feel like we're part of the school community also, which is always fantastic. And I love the attention on cyberbullying because the staff, the students, the staff and your parents and guardians can help out with physical and verbal bullying, but we're not in the same space as you are online. So it's so critical and wonderful that you're putting that emphasis on cyberbullying. So thank you.
So I have a question for anyone who would like to answer. What did you learn in the process of taking a leadership role in teaching people about bullying?
I thought it was a really cool experience and like finding like reliable like sources to get our information for the slides was like really like fun because like I figured out stuff that I wouldn't have known and it made me like think that like presenting to like a middle school is like harder than I thought. So yeah.
Well, y'all are super courageous friends, so thank you for sharing that with us today.
I would love to invite you all to come down to the elementary school and present that to the 5th grade. That would be really powerful. Really powerful.
Okay, yeah. Yes. Again, thank you very much for coming to join us.
They're so grown up. Oh my gosh. That was awesome. You know, what you shared there.
They're all out, so I can't really thank them again, but we'll move on to our student board member report. Carter.
All right. As you know, it's March, which is basically, is that good? Okay. It's basically the longest month of the year. Really long. Students are ready for spring break. Like they're ready for it. In high school, for spring sports, they had the ending assembly where they had a basketball students versus staff basketball game, which got really intense actually. Track hosted their first home game of the year, home meet of the year. Varsity tennis has won the first 3 matches so far. Golf's been busy in tournaments. Softball and baseball have started with their first games. Boys soccer has started up too. They even have several 8th graders on the team this year. The new Hot Wheels Racing Club is waiting to be approved in the consent agenda. High School Math Olympiad qualified for state. Interact Club is cookie baking for Whidbey Island Nourishes. NHS just opened up their applications for new members, and they're going to be hosting their induction ceremony next month. We had an assembly with, this is kind of in the middle of 8th grade, of middle school and high school, because both middle school and high school were here. But it was the assembly with the speaker, Lila June. She spoke about Indigenous rights, supporting youth, traditional land stewardship practices, and healing intergenerational trauma and stuff. It was a really good assembly. There's lots of good conversation with students and the speaker, and it was really good. There's also some beatboxing, live music, and yeah, in conversations. Moving on to the middle school, Winter Sports 2 finishes up. Wrestling and basketball finished up, and track began. Over 125 students have signed up for track and field. Yeah, this week, I don't know if it's this week, but there was Spirit Week in the middle school with Country versus Country Club, Jersey Day, 90s Day, and Color Block and Pajama Day. The middle school 7th and 8th grade band traveled to Edmonds and took first place in a band competition. In the elementary school, there was overwhelming support for a daffodil fundraiser. The ASB Service Project sold daffodils to raise money for Seattle Children's Hospital, which the children chose themselves. 5th grade went to Padilla Bay National Estuary Reserve. For the 4th grade, had an overnight experience at Camp Casey, where they learned a lot outside. Aspect testing is in the elementary school, which I'm kind of sharing because it's kind of part of the culture, and students are going through it with that. Author Eric Odie visited the elementary school and sang songs and read stories with the kids. And they also talked about writing and her experiences with having publishing books and being denied publication lots of times and never giving up kind of thing. But yeah.
Carter, as a person who has a young gentleman who always has a Hot Wheel in his pocket, is it possible that the high school Hot Wheels club, should it be approved tonight, could also visit the elementary school to see if any elementary students might have some cars in their pockets that could do some racing?
I can talk to the club president about
Okay,
that.
and maybe the club's president could also amend their rules so that they don't take the poor kindergartner's car if he loses.
There's some pretty harsh yeah, if you guys have read the Constitution, there's like legalized gambling in there with Hot Wheels.
Because I mean that car has gone everywhere with him, so I'm pretty sure it doesn't run straight anymore.
Yeah.
So
Who won the staff versus student game?
Staff.
Oh.
The referee also was pretty biased, if I do say so myself.
Was the referee a staff
There
member?
was there's some pretty rough calls. Lots of interesting play calls.
Was the referee on staff?
the referee might be in this room right now.
Ah, so maybe next year there could be 2 referees.
Yeah, possibly.
I'm really impressed that there are 125 students going out for track and field. I believe that's more than when I was here, when there were double the students in the school. So that's really, really impressive, the turnout and participation in that.
Yeah, that one really shocked me as well.
Thank you very much, Carter. We will move on to our consent agenda, having heard notes about one of the items on the consent agenda. Are there any objections to the consent agenda being approved as presented? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved as presented. We will move on to public comments. There are none online. We don't have any in person either. So we will move on past that and go on to new business. We only have one item of new business tonight. That is Memorandum 2324-23, approval of Resolution 681, WIAA membership renewal for 2024-2025. Dr. Moshe, if you want to address that briefly.
This is an annual renewal so that we can continue with our activities and athletics opportunities. We have our WIAA rep on the board, and Mr. Patton can fill in any blanks that the board may have on why this is an important action item.
Thank you. I did just have one question, just basically for the record, that I ask every year, I believe, just what is the alternative to being in the WIAA if we chose not to do this?
John?
Technically, there is no alternative. We have to be a member of the WIAA to play other WIAA member schools if a WIAA school cannot play a non-WIAA school. And the only really other option would be in-house intramurals, I guess.
Or
we could go to Oregon.
Or theoretically creating our own association, which would be way more effort than it was worth.
Correct.
Thank you. That's what I remembered. I just wanted to make sure that it was asked and discussed here. Any other comments or questions from the board?
I just want to remind my colleagues that sports and other activities have been proven to be one of the most cost-effective interventions for academics. And so while it could be easy to think of WIAA membership or sports and clubs in general as something ancillary to education, the two are interwoven. So I urge my colleagues to vote yes on this.
Well, and my understanding is that because it's the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association, it isn't just sports that are centered underneath this practice.
Correct.
Okay, advisory vote from our student representative, please.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2324-23, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum 2324-23 has been approved. Thank you very much. That concludes our new business. We'll move on to reports. Mr. Pullman.
So we'll start with the enrollment. And this is the March enrollment count. And as we remember, enrollment is counted from September through June, and then that average is what we're actually funded on for the year. So if we look at what we budgeted and where we are year to date, we are almost right on line with our basic education and the ALE program. We did not budget for the transition to kindergarten program, so that's above. We're a little higher in our special education and a little lower in our vocational CTE program. Just to look at it, this is how we get our averages by looking at all these months and September through March. This gives us our average of 1105 roughly for our basic education program plus our TK program. To the far right is any changes that occurred in the previous month. You can see that we may have lost or gained students at different grade levels throughout the month. And then if we look at it by the building level, you can see the TK numbers have slightly dropped from the 16 to the 14 we started. That this building is housing roughly 427 FTE. The 6-8 program about 254, and the 9-12 program in the high school has about 357 with the SWA and the other program. And ALE is about 66. So that gives us our 1119 total for the district. And this is just looking at previous year's enrollment and then what we projected for this year and where we currently are. The straight line on the bottom is the budget at 1106, and the dotted line is our monthly fluctuations in there, which we should end up almost at 1106, I think, by the end of the year. Our financial report is as of the end of February. We're halfway through the month. Again, we start from September and go through August, so we have 6 months timeline. So our revenue and expenditures should be close to that, with revenue being a little less because we claim federal funds a month after the expenditure. So we're about 48% for our revenue and about 49% for our expenditures. And you can see by looking at the revenue and expenditure numbers that, you know, we are spending about $500,000 more year to date than we have in revenue at this time. The lower left is the pattern for our revenue. January is the month that OSBI refers to as truing up. So that's when they take your actual numbers and calculate what your revenue year to date is, and then compares that to your budgeted amount, which they paid you from September through December. You see last year we had a big increase because we had more students. This year we are slightly above the previous red line in there. So a little bit above, but not much. To the right is the expenditures, and just on a monthly basis, you can see that they're not an even amount, 1/12 every month. They fluctuate based upon several factors. So revenue, again, you can see the pattern we're moving into. The two high points are levy collections from the local community. And then we move into the end of the year, and July is a little higher because the percentage we get from OSPI is a higher percentage in that month than it is in other months. So it gives you an expectation of what we can expect if we claim all our funds. And you can see that we are, other than that January bump last year, we were just about exactly where we have been for the last couple of years. And that relates to the fact that our revenue is stagnant. It basically is the same revenue that we've had for several years. Expenditures, again, it's a little different pattern, but we're on that same, once we got into November, kind of that same pattern of when we spend our funds, and you can kind of expect what we will do based upon previous patterns here. We look at encumbrances, and those are the costs that we know that we have to have money for, which is our contracts and anything that we have a purchase order for that we haven't received yet. You can see that our non-employee costs, our material, supplies, and other costs is about 62% of budget. Our payrolls at about 99.5%, and overall, we're a little over 93% of our budget. So we have almost 7% of our budget that's still available, but there are things that we purchase that we don't encumber throughout the year.
Just to make sure that I'm understanding the payroll with encumbrances, the vast majority of that is going to be encumbrances because we expect it. So the variation is based on how many staff members take leave time and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so basically the encumbrances is every employee has a contract. And the things that you don't see encumbered are leave. So if I go out on sick leave and they bring a substitute in for me, that is not an encumbered because I don't know what that's going to be. We budget for those dollar amounts in the budget process, but we don't encumber them because it's a wide variance throughout the year. So that's the pieces that we don't know.
Thank you. That's what I assumed, because that's almost always somewhere in the 98 to 99 range. So I just wanted to make sure that I had the right assumption there. So thank you.
Correct. And this is, you know, a picture of what that looks like when you start talking about those percentages. You can see that traditionally in 2018, 19, 20, we were about 92, 93%, which is about where we are today. So it makes me feel comfortable that we are in the kind of the place we should be. The middle part is the aberration due to COVID and all the things that we, you know, saw during that time. And this is kind of a historical look at revenue versus expenditure to kind of see how they offset each other. And this is why we have fund balance, because there's lots of months where the expenditures exceed revenue, except for those big levy months and kind of the end of the year process. So it's kind of keeping track of that. And here's another way of looking at revenue and expenditure on an annual basis. And you can see that in 1819, 1920, our revenue exceeded our expenditures. And then we went into a period where expenditures are exceeding revenue. The simple answer for that is that our revenue has been flat. Okay, it's based on enrollment, it's based on all these other factors, but it hasn't been going up, where our expenditures are more and more becoming employee costs with raises with IPD and the cost of living and those things that going on there. So that's why when we look in the budget process about making adjustments to the budget, this is what we're looking at, is that there's this differential that our expenditures are greater than our revenue. So when we talk about our budget for 24, 25, it'll become quite clear because it's a very similar pattern that we'll see in that. Anyways, so yeah, so basically you look at revenue, it's gone down over the years where expenditures have gone up. Another way of looking at that same thing, this is the use of fund balance year to date. It's not an annual picture because it changes by the end of the year. And 22, 23 would have been somewhere between those two numbers had it not been all the federal funds we received, which helped to offset those costs. But you can also see that we are decreasing that differential, and that has been very evident in our budget process that we needed to do that. So it's an ongoing process that we planned that would take several years. Fund balance, you can see that our fund balance is still strong. The red line is almost identical to where we were last year at this particular time. So it's about 22% of our budget. So it's still holding fairly strong, though we expect, if you look at the patterns, that it will drop slightly by the end of the year. There are a few things that have happened that may change that in our favor a little bit. And when we talk about some of the legislation that happened, you will see that there's some additional funding that's coming in. We also received some additional funding for safety net for transportation, and a few things like that that are unexpected revenue that will help this a little bit, not a lot, but some. Just the budget status report. This is where our breakdown is on our revenue and our expenditure by program. And again, it gives you that bottom line fund balance, about $4.6 million. And it shows the encumbrances in the general fund of those dollars that we're talking about. That's part of that percentage, that 93%. Another way of looking at the same thing by multiple funds and its assets and liabilities comes up with the same fund balance. And this is a breakdown of how we spend our money in these these big buckets of the top three are salary and benefits, which is, 87% of our total budget. We are in the people business after all, because that's what we do. And then supplies, services, and travel. And again, I point out that services is the one that is increasing over time compared to the others that are actually decreasing. There was a little bit of help in the legislative session, and I'll mention that a little later about what that happened. And then the other funds we have, capital projects currently has about $2.6 million. Debt service has a little over 86,000 with the final payment due in June. And then that account will be basically, it won't be closed because we'll use it with the bond process, but it will no longer have any bills paid out of it until we start that new process. ASB is about 111,000. The transportation vehicle fund, 683, though I did spend 392,000 last week for the electric school bus. We made that payment. And then the private purpose trust fund, which is donated funds from community members for scholarships for students, has about 811,000. And again, that one will always stay at about that amount because we can only spend the interest on it, which has been much better this year. So it's going to help with more scholarships. When you're getting, 4% instead of 0.02%, it's quite a difference on $800,000. Any questions I could answer for you? And if not, I'll talk a little bit about the legislative session and what we saw from that.
I just have a preview question for next month because I don't want to spring it on you next month. I'd love to hear, well, first of all, welcome, Paul. And I'd love to hear about the transition plan.
Oh, I can tell you that.
Okay.
I'm quitting.
Yeah.
I'm just leaving.
Hey, don't
Okay.
take my thunder from the superintendent's report. Give me a minute.
Okay. Well, as usual, you're one step ahead of me.
Okay, a little bit about the legislative highlights. They're not high, but we'll talk about them. So there's a couple things. the Senate Bill 5882 did a couple things in there that were helpful. One was a retroactive increase to the MSOCs. So that's the money we get for supplies, services, et cetera. They increased it in the current year by $21. And they did that and that's $20 per student. So with 1,100 students times 21, you're $23,200 or something like that we will receive this year. So when I talk about fund balance going up a little bit, that's one of the things with the transportation funding and some of the other things. So that was encouraging. I think they heard the message about utilities and insurance. But the other side of that is when they raised MSOCs for 24-25, they increased it by 1.9%. So they told us inflation, the IPD was 6.7%, but they increased our funding by 1.9%. So we have this deficit that continues year after year. So a little help this year was great, but it didn't solve the problem. There's still more work to be done. They also did, there was in the previous legislative session language that increased the staffing formula for funding for paraeducators, office staff, counselors, a few other things. Well, they made the staffing allocations for teaching assistants, which they used to refer to as paraeducators, and office staff retroactive to 23-24. So there's a little more money we'll receive in the current year from that. And then they increased it again in 24-25. They also, House Bill 1664 from session prior was increasing counselors, and it was over a stepped period of time. Well, they kind of sped that up a little bit. So we're gonna get a little more money sooner. Not that it's gonna change the formula in the future, but it did give us a little more money now. Special education was a little disappointing to me. I had hoped that they would do something like increase the multiplier so we get more money per student, but what they increased was the cap from 15% to 16%. We're currently at 15%. So for us to receive more funds for special education, we have to have more students enrolled and have increased costs to get reimbursed for those costs. So there's no help in special education that I can see from that. The one thing that is exciting that I really like is House Bill 1238, which is Meals for Washington Students. Currently has a 40% free and reduced level to have free meals for all K4, and in our case, it's pre-K 5 because they're in the same building, meals. They had planned to increase that to, or decrease that to 30% in the coming year, but the federal government backed away from some of the funding. Well, the state picked up that difference. So next year, every child in this building, in the TK program or the ALE program, because they're all under the same entity, can have free breakfast and lunch in this building. So there will be no more differentiation between being paid, free, reduced. Every meal is free and we get reimbursed at that federal rate. So I'm hoping with Rachel's help that the district can, really get kids excited about, having meals and participation numbers go up. That would decrease the amount the district supports our food service program by. So it's a very positive thing, and it's the opportunity for every child to have a meal regardless of any factor.
Dan, how would that impact a first grader who likes to bring his own lunch and have hot lunch?
They can have both in my mind. They could trade their lunch for Hot Wheels.
Is he allowed to have two lunches still?
I have a second grader who likes to do the same thing. And this will be fantastic for us, not having to plan out which day she gets to have hot lunch, being able to do that every day. I think it's fantastic for families. I think it's fantastic for students. It removes social stigma about having free or reduced lunch. I'm so happy that they did this. Thank you for sharing that good news.
Yeah, and we just made it at 30.81%. Just barely made it, but we made it. Yeah, we still have to do the compliance things, the applications and all the things that we have to do normally, but for the families, it's great. So that's exciting.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? You got ahead of me on welcoming Paul Fields, so thank you for that and welcome. Okay, we'll move on to Superintendent's report.
Thank you. Before we get to Paul Field, I'd like to recognize that Carter asked me for a recommendation to become a state school board member, and I have my fingers crossed for him. We'll see. The application is due this week, right?
It is due Friday.
Yeah.
I have it almost done.
Excellent. So we may have a very, a celebrity in our midst. We are ready for spring break as adults as well. And March is the longest month. So over 20 folks came together a couple weeks back after a long season of recruiting to replace my friend Dan, who really has decided he's leaving in June. And we interviewed applicants. It was a 3-hour process. There were well over 20 folks there, including 2 board members, a student representative, teachers, staff, and administrators. And I'd like to welcome Paul Field to our staff. The cream rises to the top, and he did, and it was unanimous. So I recommended that he be hired, and you approved that this evening. So the transition plan is that Paul will begin working with Dan through May and June on a full-time basis, and preparing the budget and presenting the budget to you in July. As well as along the way, I think Dan might give up the reins. I'm not sure. But I'm really excited to have Paul working with us. So I feel really good about that transition. As much as we will miss Dan, I think Paul is going to be an awesome addition to our staff. So welcome, Paul. Really, other than that, that was the only thing. That Dan covered all the rest of it, and you almost blew the one thing I wanted to bring up. So that's it for the superintendent's update, and welcome spring break.
Cannot come soon enough. Yes. Legislative report, since Director Jackson isn't here, Director Greenherron has graciously stepped up.
Yeah, Director Jackson gave me the following to report to the board. Every school board has the opportunity to propose a revision, retirement, or addition to WASDA. That's the Washington State School Director Association's platform of 225 positions. The window's open from now until April 8th. As a board, we would need to vote on whether or not, boards will send a delegate, in this case, Director Jackson, to vote on whether or not to adopt proposals at WASDA's annual General Assembly, which occurs every fall. Director Jackson reports that most of our priority issues as a board and a district are already represented among WASDA's positions, including the position that WASDA opposes policy and legislation that would restrict or deter a district's ability to create or maintain a TK program. And so Director Jackson, as legislative representative, recommends no further action at this time, unless we hear from an administrator or another board member that they find an omission in WASDA's current policy catalog.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you, Director Jackson in absentia. We'll move on to board comments and reports.
I apologize if this is a little long-winded, but I have been thinking about this for quite some time. And I would like to just preface this as I invite this to be an opportunity for all of us to call each other in with our language and to think about the impact words have and how we frame. There was an article published in the Whitby Times today that highlighted the focus on South Whitby's school leadership changes. And I have noticed this from our news outlets for a number of years, and I, freely speak about it. But today was really struck for me because I felt like it was a missed opportunity. There was an opportunity to thank Joe and Dan for the years of dedication and work that they spent on this district to highlight very accomplished careers. And instead, the article chose to focus solely on the salaries. And I also want to preface this with, I understand that these numbers and these salaries are much higher than the majority of people on Whidbey are making. So I want to preference that, but I want to put it into some context. In this article, they start off with some, an introduction. And then the second paragraph says Superintendent Josephine Moshe, who has been the district superintendent for 13 years, will retire in 2025. Her base salary is more than $200,000, period. There is no conversation about the almost 20 years of superintendent experience that our superintendent has. And it goes on to talk about Dan and Paul joining our district. And I want to give it some contrast because on Whidbey, we have 3 districts, 2 of which have female superintendents at the helm. Oak Harbor recently hired Michelle for their superintendent. That article starts off with the first paragraph being Oak Harbor Public Schools recently appointed Superintendent Michelle. I apologize, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. She will earn $209,183 a year in her new position, according to school board documents. Again, no mention of why that salary was agreed upon, no mention of the credentials that she carries with that. And let's pivot to Superintendent King. Superintendent King's salary is not mentioned until almost halfway, 3/4 of the way down the page. They give a generality. So the language that they use is that he will have more. And the only point where this newspaper started to speak about Superintendent King's salary was when Coupeville started facing significant budget cuts. Up until then, there is no mention of his salary in any newspaper. When Lance Gibbons, who was Oak Harbor's former superintendent, announced his resignation and his transition to another district, there was no mention of his salary in Oak Harbor. There was no mention of anything. In fact, it focused on his accomplishments in that district. And it wasn't until the very end of the article where they mentioned the salary he will be paid in his new district. There was an article put out earlier this week by District Administration, which is an article that we receive on numerous mailing lists. And I'd like to read a large section of it because I think it's important, and I'm happy to provide it to anyone who would like to follow up on it. And it starts off by saying bias is still a big obstacle for women in K-12 leadership. Gender bias is still a major obstacle standing in the way of women in district and state education leadership. A new survey reveals that these leaders nearly universally experience gender bias that impacts their ability to do their job, how they feel about their work, and their overall well-being. Women are in the same space as men, but they are not playing the same game as men. Women are being held back from advancement in every career rung. The survey features responses of 110 women, half of whom identify as leaders of color, who serve nearly 8 million students in 81 different districts in 28 states. The response held roles ranging from district and state superintendents to aspiring leaders in various administrative positions. Nearly all of the superintendents surveyed, 95%, said they have had to make sacrifices in their professional lives that male colleagues did not. Nearly 6 out of 10 of all respondents have considered leaving their current position due to strain and stress. When women are getting into top leadership roles, it is often done with a small margin of error. They're coming into systems that have not dealt with some of their underlying problems, and these women are the ones getting blamed when the problems come to bear. More key findings from the survey, and I'll read these and then let you continue if you would like. 82% of the respondents reported that often or sometimes feeling external pressure to dress, speak, or behave a certain way because they are women. 55% of women of color report that they often feel that this pressure is compared to 36% of white women. 57% say they have been overlooked or passed up for advancement opportunities given to male colleagues, and 53% of superintendents say their gender has influenced the outcome of conversations or negotiations about their salaries. I want to put this into some context. Administrators in Oak Harbor, the superintendent is paid $216,000 and some change. The assistant superintendent is paid $210,000. The assistant superintendent of human resources and operations is paid $207,000. The high school principal is paid a top rate of $203,000. Middle school and intermediate principals are paid $189. Elementary school principals are $183. I can keep going. You go to Coopville, that superintendent is making $198,000 and some change. Their assistant principal, $144,000. Their high school principal makes $172,000. Their elementary principal makes $175,000. And their HR person makes $137,000. Their special ed director, which is a position I have held, makes $144,000. Our numbers are not outside of the realm of what is typical or expected on South Whidbey. And again, I would like to challenge all of us when we see that bias put into print to call it in and to call it what it is. I would not be saying this if the male superintendents were reported the same way, if their salaries were the third sentence in every article, but they're not. And I have sat on this board for almost 8 years and noticed that. And I have tried to talk to people about it, and I have tried to shift it and change it. And today was, again, just a disappointing missed opportunity to thank people for their hard work and their dedication. And I just would encourage all of the 7 people on Zoom and the 10 people in this room to hear that and to see what it brings up for ourselves.
Thank you for sharing that, Director Downs. I'd actually like to we've actually got an opportunity building directly off of that. The League of Women Voters has approached this board. They're having a forum on local news and democracy on Whidbey Island, the health of local news. And they've invited this board to have 1 or 2 members to sit on that forum. And as it would be an official representative, I needed to bring it before the board before accepting that. I think that we can look around and see if everyone is in favor of that in general without having a vote, since it doesn't require an actual vote to have a delegation. I think that this is an opportunity to address some of these issues that you've brought up, Andrea, and thank you for the leadership you're showing in bringing those issues to the forefront once again. And I think it's an opportunity for us to address those directly in a public forum with a well-respected leader in nonpartisan discussion. With the board's head nods or whatever, I'd love to take their invitation and have a member or 2 of this board on that panel.
I would say publicly, personally, for me as a board member, yes. And I would be happy to serve in that capacity, pending that it fits the rest of my schedule for leadership.
Excellent. We are able to do scheduling issues offline, so I won't worry about that. Excellent. Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or reports to be made? You'd like to address something, Dr. Moshe?
If you don't mind, you bring up a great point, and I appreciate all that you said, Andrea. I do also think that the news reporting that in fairness, that they don't have a news team really. It's a local newspaper published twice a week. And so I don't expect there to be a great deal of research. And so I want to address an inaccuracy as well. I wasn't going to, but you bring that up. And, we saw the electric school bus a couple weeks ago, and there was no news reporter here. We provided a press release that was not used. Instead, the article that was published, and I love highlighting kids, our USL kids do amazing work, but they totally ignored the fact that Dan Poolman had applied for electric bus grant an entire year before USL approached the district on that. It was turned down. He applied a second time. And at that same time, the USL folks came forward, and rightly so, asked us to investigate that. But it's never raised as the district really did pursue that ahead of time. And I always want kids out front. That's not what this is about. It's just an unfortunate news article that only captured that and not the entire story. So I appreciate that you're going to address the League of Women Voters and talk about accurate reporting.
And for anyone who is interested in that forum, it will be held Saturday, June 8th from noon to 1 p.m. at the Greenbank Progressive Hall. And I'll share that information. Actually, you all have seen that email, I believe. But if not, I will make sure. And if you're interested in being one of our 1 or 2 representatives, please let me know.
Director Downs, I want to thank you for bringing this up. And I think we have an opportunity not only to correct the narrative among the public and in the media, but also it comes at a great time for our district where we're going to be discussing and learning from and educating our community about the market rate for superintendents, and helping the community understand that a qualified, experienced, top-notch superintendent like Dr. Moshe and like her successor, whoever that person is, commands a salary in the open market. It's just a matter of supply and demand, and it does come as a sticker shock, like you said. But the price of a poor superintendent is immensely more than the salary of a quality one.
I think there is also Coupeville just announced their finalists for their superintendent position. There's 1 female candidate out of 4. There is a huge discrepancy in gender bias of who gets to come into this position. And that's before negotiations even happen. And that's why this entire time that we've been talking about the search committee that we choose, why having checks and balances even on the recruitment side to screen for bias has been so critically important to me. As somebody who up until recently has spent 20 years in the education field, who have watched other colleagues want to enter into the superintendent space and to be told they're not viable candidates, or to be told that they are tracked into positions that don't typically promote into a superintendent position, which that article also continues to go into. It's not about the money. The money's going to make people mad no matter what, because most people are not making $200,000 on Whidbey. And again, I know that, and I don't want to make that I don't want to make that the conversation, because I recognize there are people who are struggling to make ends meet, who are working very hard, who are not making that salary. The conversation is more so, if everybody is making that rate, why is it only reported when the person happens to identify as female? And why is it not reported, or reported in a way where it is a celebration when the person is male?
Thank you all for giving these reports and comments. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned. Good night.